All right,
Should we,
we're calling the meeting to order. It's 4:06 and we're all present. Go ahead, David.
no, I lost my train of thought. Oh, no, it's with regard to handling of documents. I like to print out documents, and because if I'm on Zoom right now, it's very difficult for me to go and pull them up and go away from Zoom and then come back and then have to open up things on Outlook. So I like to print things out. I'm old fashioned. I'm 78 years old. Printing is part of my lexicon. I'm having trouble doing it because I have an iPad that I use and an iMac, and when I copy things, the formatting gets all screwy, and I have trouble. And I'm just curious if there's somebody there who has the same issues, and maybe we could talk offline. You know, I could call you tomorrow or somebody tomorrow to give me some guidance on how to do that. So, does anybody else have trouble and even want to print things out before meetings?
I don't. You mean you don't have 4 monitors on your iPad? Like,
I'm 78 years old. No.
I have a question, David. So you're using an iPad, you said, so it's not like a laptop, is that correct?
Correct.
Right. And the printer you have at home, is it Bluetooth?
Yes.
Okay. And is it connected to your iPad?
Via my internal Bluetooth, whatever you want to call it.
Right. So when you click on a document in Microsoft Teams or something, and are you trying to print it from Microsoft Teams onto your printer?
I try to print it directly, but it doesn't work. And then I try to copy it and put it in Pages, and that frequently work either. Let's talk another time. I just wanted to know, maybe if you a resource I could contact about this. Sounds like it.
My guess is I have Microsoft downloaded all those, like PowerPoint to Excel, Word on my laptop as well as my desktop, and that's what enables me to.
Yeah. And well, I'm from a different perspective, so I'll talk. But I'll find somebody with.
Olivia might help you troubleshoot it. I don't know. She seems pretty conversant in these things.
Okay, sorry to bother you guys.
No problem.
No worries. Okay. So any additions to the agenda things that we already sent you?
Well, again, I wasn't able to print it, but I think there was 2 things that might not have been on there that I think we talked about before. One was an age requirement for county council members. If it's on the agenda, I apologize, but I think it was on the original list, which again, I've been unable to print.
Yeah, the age requirement was one, and but I thought we were done with that. Are we still?
Well, we're not done with anything, as I think. Remember, we had the discussion about legislative versus residency, and that's districts, and that's on the agenda. And I thought we had wrapped that up also. So can we just add that to the agenda, the age requirement?
Sure. That's section 5.2, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Anything else? I think what we'd like to add also, if you notice on the agenda, we added the discussion to expand the Charter Review Commission election, either district or countywide.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not just Charter Review Commission, other elected officials, countywide or district-wide. Paul Dossett brought that up last time. So I thought we can add that and discuss it, see how far we can go with that. Also, I did send you earlier today a document that we asked Tom Starr to put together, which is the recommendation from our group, from this committee, to the larger group, that there should be some kind of an election modification. It's more of a procedural thing that we felt last week, that this is something that we can come up as a paragraph that we can move forward. So we can discuss that briefly today and see where we go with that. David, you had a couple of items that you mentioned last week that you wanted to talk about? Are you still not the 18-year-old, but something else that you mentioned? And I don't recall. I didn't write it down, so I don't remember what you mentioned.
Was it in the minutes?
No.
No, okay, well, was it the 3 versus 5? Go back to address that.
That is probably that's not our purview, I don't think.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I don't remember what the other ones were.
All right, we'll get going with our meeting, and then we will see if that comes up into your recollection again. So again, thank you, Sharon, for doing the minutes for last meeting, and it was all sent forward to the next folks. You've all had a chance to read the minutes. Any recommendation or suggestions of what to change or add?
I had a question, Tony.
Yeah.
Just in terms of Sharon's doing a great job of capturing the essence and conversation of the minutes. I just did wonder, and particularly since some of you have lots of board experience using Robert's rules, et cetera. Sometimes minutes are rather brief, of the nature that what our minutes are. No, it's not a criticism, Sharon, not at all. What I mean is, school board minutes, for example, or even the minutes of our meetings, the CRC meetings, they're much more concise, and they don't necessarily include the conversation. And so I just wondered, and again, we want to be thinking about this in terms of consistency, how all these groups are preparing minutes. So I was just curious, given that we're recording and minuting, what everybody's take on doing the minutes was in such a detailed manner, but I'm just asking the question of you all.
I just want to say that minutes are usually just, we discussed this, motion was made, motion passed, That's usually all it is. I was doing more so we would have it at our fingertips, and in case the recording didn't work, whatever it didn't, but they're usually much more brief than my note taking.
Yeah.
Would you mind to carry Jane's suggestion to kind of make it, if you're willing to do it today, to make it briefer?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. I'm okay with it. I agree with you, Jane. I think minutes normally are much less, like I said in our note to you, very comprehensive minutes, which is great to have.
Yeah.
Right? But that's too much work for you.
Yeah, in my experience, I've never had anybody as good as Sharon is in picking up practically all the ideas. And I think as long as the emotions are clearly specified in the midst of all this, these are great. I really have been good for me to say, oh yeah, we talked about that. So right. Thank you, Sharon.
I have to say it did help me when I was doing the report to the committee yesterday. I just scanned your minutes before the meeting. I said, oh, I know what we're going to talk about. So that was all right. Go ahead.
I don't think she missed anything of mine, as complete as it was. I just looked at some notes I took, and I don't think there was anything else, Tony, that was missed. You asked that a few minutes ago. I don't see anything else. So
that's great. That's good. So
I was just gonna.
My note taking is a result of two things. My note taking is a result of my not having a good memory, and my being a fast typist because I was a legal secretary for 12 years in New York.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I can be brief. I promise you I can.
Perfect. All right. I'm going to
staying with us. Thank you, Sharon.
I'm going to find the minutes for today.
Oh, Tom was going to say something.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just said, Sharon, you can leave as long as you send a capable replacement like yourself.
I've heard that before.
All right, so I'm going to invite somebody to motion to accept the minutes from last time.
So moved.
Tom, is there a second?
Second.
Jane? Jane is a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes being approved? Say aye or
aye.
Aye. Any opposition? No. All right. Well, great. Unanimous. Normally, I like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda, but since we're a subcommittee, I don't think that's really necessary. As long as we all nod our heads and say, yeah, we like the agenda the way it is, and we'll go with that. Is that okay with you? All right.
That's good.
All right. So let's talk about the CRC election district as opposed to countywide. And Jane, I recall that you wanted to get back to your constituents to get some feedback. So I'm kind of asking to see if we have a feedback that you want to report on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I did do that. I did two things. One, I spoke with some of the constituents in our district, in District 3, and that I thought might have a sense of this issue and have an opinion on it. Additionally, I spoke with Liz Lafferty and Bob O'Connell, and my conclusion is that I think we should just leave it the way it is. We should be voting for commissioners by district, not countywide. For some of the reasons that you all raised last week, but also because some of those reasons were echoed by a couple of people I spoke with. So it seems for the purpose of commissioners, it may actually, and I think you guys referred to this, but I heard this from others, it may actually disinhibit very, well-meaning and qualified people from even running for the position of commissioner because they just see it as too much effort. And so that's where I landed on this matter. I'm prepared to, say we take the issue off the table. The only person, frankly, and you guys may recall this prior to breaking into our various committees, the only other person that felt strongly about this was Kevin Ranker. And so I shared with Kevin the results of the sort of surveying of, if you will, of what I did in reaching out to constituents, and also shared with him the opinions of my two fellow commissioners in this district, and let him know, and also shared with him the minutes from our meeting last week so he could see where you stood on this issue as well. And I think he didn't get back to me in writing, but I know that he saw my emails, and I think Kevin's probably okay with us letting this one go. If he weren't, I think he'd probably just show up today, and he's not. So I'm going to hazard that guess, but from my side, I don't feel the need to bring this issue forward.
Thank you, Jane, for the good report. David?
Jane, were you implying that Kevin was in favor of the being voted on by the entire county as opposed to vote by district?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
He presented that as his issue, and I remember when we had a nod of the head of the whole commission, I think he was the only one that was for that. So, all right. So if it's okay with you all, can somebody make a motion that in that sense that we will keep the election of the CRC as it is, if you don't mind doing that?
I have a procedural question.
Yes.
This would be the first vote we'd have and put something on the. If we're determining that we want to amend something, then I can see where a motion is obvious, that we need to have a motion to amend and have a vote and put it in the minutes and in the record for passing on. And it's actually a motion to pass it on to the full Charter Review Commission. It's not to put it necessarily into the amendment yet. But when we talk about something where we're not going to be proposing amendment, how do we document that? Do we have a motion just like we do when we're voting to approve something, or do we just document that we talked about it and decided not to make a motion?
I think we are in a situation as a subcommittee to be able to still use Robert's Rule of Order, and the Robert's Rule, since it is in our docket, the 3 items on that spreadsheet, we're supposed to act on it. We cannot just say we just talked about it and nothing came forward. We have to kind of make a positive decision. You don't vote on a negative decision. You normally want to vote on a positive decision. Our positive decision is that we just leave it the way it is. So that's my suggestion, is to make a motion to still leave it the way it is, and we'll second it and we'll vote on it and we'll just carry it forward.
Okay, that makes sense.
So any motion of whatever motion you want? Anybody? David?
Let's see.
Okay, I move that we document that we have discussed a possible amendment to the section such and such with regard to how the Charter Review Commission commissioners are elected. And I think that's Article 9.20, I think it is. And we decided to maintain the current wording without alteration, period.
Okay, that's a lengthy motion, but I'll go along with my.
Well, I was talking very slowly too, so.
Yeah. All right, we have a motion. I'm not gonna be the editor of the motion. So we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Tom seconds it. Any discussion?
I would only say that it's section 9.20, Article 1 and, not Article 1, but yeah, 1D is, no, not 1D, it's 1C. Yeah, 1C.
Yeah.
9.201C is what we're referring to in Article 9. My apologies.
You mean section?
Article 9, section 9.20.
Yep.
1C. Yeah, that's what we're referring to.
Right.
I withdraw my motion because I have an observation that I should have made before then. I withdraw my motion.
Go ahead.
I read this language again this afternoon, wherever we are, and I actually do not see the language that I just referred to in my proposed amendment. I don't see where it actually says that. It does say there must so many members of each residency district, and they shall be apportioned according to the population distribution in each county council residency district. That's section 9.20A or 1A. But if you go over to the next page, the 9.201B, this is where I would believe it should be inserted, but it doesn't. It says candidates for the CRC must be residents of the county and registered voters of the district in which they run and have been registered voters in the county for at least 5 years preceding their election. And that's the only place where I see anything about qualifications that might apply to, well, it doesn't apply. It applies to qualifications. It doesn't apply to how the vote, who's qualified to vote. It's about qualifications for the candidates, but not for qualifications for the vote. Where is it?
David, we're going into a rabbit hole. I think our task is to decide if the CRC should be voted upon in their district or in the county as a county vote. I don't want us to find stuff that we're not looking for. And
this is completely relevant because I don't think it says that the candidates will be elected by district. I don't think it says.
It does in C. In C, the language states, there shall be no filing fee, nor shall there be a primary. The qualified voters of the respective district shall vote only for candidates from their district at the general election.
Okay, that's great.
That's the language.
Thank you, Jane. I'm embarrassed that I didn't see that. Thank you.
That's okay. That's okay.
I make a motion to reaffirm what Jane just stated.
Great. So, but can you hold off that motion, Paul? Let me ask David if he wants to reconsider his original motion.
My original motion is fine. I was wrong and withdrawing it, but I think somebody should write it down so we actually have it very concise.
Got it.
Tony, I can offer to write it and send it to the group after the meeting.
Correct. So you still have a second? Jane, you're still second on the original?
I think Tom was second.
Tom was the second.
Oh, Tom was the second on the original motion. Okay. Paul, part of discussion, do you still want to keep your motion going for later on, or you're done with your motion?
I'm done.
Okay, great. So we have a motion, we have a second, we've had discussion. Any more discussion? Hearing none. Of course, we thankfully asked Jane to come up with the actual motion, but having that not there yet, the understanding of it is that we're going to keep things as they are. So,
Yeah, right.
all in
Yeah.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody
Okay.
opposed? None. So the motion passes, and thank you. This is good. We got one off the list.
So I'll send that to you after the meeting today, and if you can all take a look at it and make sure you're comfortable with the language of the motion, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay, the other item that we would like to put to rest is the proposal to add 18 years of age for elected officials as a requirement. Is that that we kind of chatted about that last time, but we really did not come up with a decision on it. I know we kind of put to rest the legislative versus other name for the district, and we let it stay as it is. Any discussion on the 18-year-old? Is that something that we want to move forward?
Can I speak to that, Tony?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm the guy that brought up that suggestion, and I took that, I think I told you before, from another chatter group, and it appeared to me that 18 is a little bit young, and some other people had mentioned something like 21 years of age might be something a bit more mature. And something to think about. So I'm not hung up on 18. It's just that that is the age group to become a registered voter.
So let me ask the group, do you want to include an age as a part of the qualification? I know the qualification, you have to be a resident of the district or of the county, you have to be a registered voter, a US citizen, and so on and so forth. Do you want to add an age?
And sorry, we're
Got a
talking for
question.
county council member, is that correct?
Correct.
Any.
Any elected official, I guess, right? Paul, you started that. Is that any elected official or just county council?
Well, it was broad for any elected official. So you're right. It's more than just the council.
Okay.
Can I just add a qualifier on this issue
Yeah.
though? Because just for the positions of commissioners, that clause B that David was reading off, I mean, you have to have voted in the district for the previous 5 years. If you're only 18 years of age, you won't have voted for 5 years prior. So I think maybe what we're talking about is, well,
County
at least
council.
that doesn't even apply for the commissioner positions. So whether it applies for the council positions, I'm not sure, because I didn't look at those in more
So,
detail.
Yeah. So can I interrupt? I'm sorry. I shouldn't interrupt.
No, go ahead.
5.20 is talking about county council. So
Yeah.
the 18 years of age is referring to the county council only.
Right.
Okay. But does that say anything about having to have lived and voted for 5 years for the county council?
I sure don't see it. It's in 5.20, folks.
No, it just states that you have to be a registered voter, which would mean you have to be of voting age. It doesn't specify how many years you would have had to vote in the county.
Right.
Right. So that, I think if you want to keep that point going, Paul, I think we have the wording for it. There's no prohibition on putting an age of 18 or 21. Tom?
Well, I see with interest on the 6 o'clock news the younger members of the Seattle City Council. And sometimes I'm flabbergasted at how young they look, but I think the one guy I think is 24 or something like that. But I would ask our friend Paul, who taught high school kids in his prior career, what do you think about the 17 or 18-year-olds in your experience? Would you, on this committee, for example, could they bring some insight that we old timers have forgotten about?
You know, when you become a teacher, you have to take a lot of education classes in college about adolescence and how they grow over time, you know, so you understand the different levels of mentality of kids as they grow older. And it's true, when you get into high school and you get up to 18 years of age, we all know that they're fairly matured and they probably could do the job. But the other question is, are they mature enough in respect to, I could say, worldly? They've been out in the world a little bit, and there is that sense that the brain is not fully developed yet. So I would say that 18 is probably a little young. I'd probably go for 21. I would be happy to change that.
Yeah.
All right. So let me just say something. I think we need to kind of. I think if you decide on 21, you're the mover mover forward of that particular idea. So if you want 21 to be the discussion, I think I'm going to ask everybody, is that something that we want to discuss as 21, or shall we just drop 18 completely?
I'm game.
No,
Remind me again, are we talking about all elected positions or just
County council.
commissioners?
County council only.
Just the council, okay.
David?
I think we should go to 21. I think any of these brilliant students that we were talking about in high school, they're going to go on to college. They're not going to go on. They're not going to run for county council anyway. I'm not sure
Yeah.
eliminate anybody, but I support the idea. I see that we're covered on the Charter Review Commission with you have to have 5 years registered voting in the county. Can we just add that to the county council requirements that you have to have 5 years, or is that instead of 20? Can we do it that way to be consistent with the other one? I mean, I would think we'd want somebody who's been around in the county for a number of years to understand the culture and the issues, the problems. And what does it say currently? They have to be in the district for 5 years or not? Or does
No,
it doesn't at all?
not under 5.20.
Yeah, I would suggest adding 5 years. Then we get people who really understand. It's not just a question of age and intelligence, maturity and experience. It's knowing the island, knowing the county, knowing the culture, the issues, the problems, the dynamics, etc.
Let me just respond to that for a second. I'm really not. I'm just speaking for myself, not for all you guys, obviously, but for myself, I really don't think we should be putting any qualifications about length of time on the island or the county or all that, because that's, to me, it's an elected position that costs a lot of money to run for office. And if somebody's only been here a year or two, they'll be out of their mind if they decide to run against somebody who is established. So I'm not sure that's really something that's a problem we're fixing. We're talking about age right now. We can add that. Jane?
Well, I have a question and comment. I guess I'll start with my comment first. I think my comment is I think we need to be careful about moving into the territory of discrimination, frankly. And I think we have to be mindful that young people in this day and age are pretty sophisticated, okay? We're talking about, it's a new world, all right? And the level at which young people learn and become attuned to issues is at a far faster pace. And if you're not familiar with that, I can tell you it's a reality. I'm personally living with my 14-year-old, and I know many other parents do as well. So I'm nervous about introducing language that is restrictive in this paragraph without having there be any real purpose for doing so, because I've not heard that it has been the language itself has been problematic to date. In other words, have there been young people applying to be county councilors of the age of 18 and they've not been of a qualified nature? Now, here's the other thing, to Mylene Henling's point yesterday, this electorate is a bright electorate. People look into who's running for positions, etc. And so I don't know what problem we're trying to solve here with changing this clause. So
yeah, Sharon, please. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks, Sharon.
Another point is that, sometimes young people are interested in politics. They want to run for office to have the experience of doing that, to start getting known as a leader in the community. And there's, to my mind, 18-year-olds can go into the armed forces, they can vote. And the kids here are pretty astute. We have a lot of really astute students here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would rather not limit it myself.
Yeah, thank you. I think Sharon captured our minutes from last week. I think I said it then that I've dealt with a bunch of young students when I was on the school board, and some of these kids are pretty sharp at 16 and 17. So if they are willing to run for office at a certain age, I'm so happy. So our thing that's on the table today is that, do we want to put a minimum age limit for the county council in section 520? That's really what we're trying to focus on. And if that's the case, I would entertain a motion to say we would like to add an age limit of 18 to section 520. or 21, whatever the motion is going to be. Tom?
Just a question. So the way section 5.2 reads now, they must be a registered voter. So they've got to be 18, right? So in effect, we have established it by doing nothing, we're keeping it at 18.
Good point. Very good point. See, that's what happens when you have
Awesome, way to go, Tom.
That's what happens when
Clarity.
you have a seasoned county former official and so on, that it's right there in front of our eyes. We didn't see it. A bunch of educated people, we didn't even see it. Thank you, Tom. So you want to increase it up to 21, Paul?
Well, I wouldn't mind going there, but it sounds like the fact that you can be a registered voter at age 18, that pretty much says it all, doesn't it?
Sounds good. So, yes, Dave.
I don't understand Paul's comment about 18. I mean, if a registered voter, you're at 18, so that doesn't get us to 21.
No, that's true. That would be a different motion.
When people say there's some students I know that are very smart, yeah, there are also some students that aren't very smart. And I just think that having some minimum requirement, maturity and stick-to-itiveness. How many young people do you know, and I will throw myself in this category, although that was a long, long time ago. How many younger people do you think are going to stick around for 6 years? Somebody's going to run for election at 18, and a year later, they're going to get a job offer in New York or to have a friend with a high-tech company where they make a lot more money, and they're going to go. I just think it's opening up a can of worms and I don't know why now, having said that, Jane is right. Not many who's going to run. It's probably unlikely, but I think you have to have some minimum requirement. Heck, you're going to end up the possibility. And we're talking about eventualities. I know, Jane, it's not like there's been a problem or we expect a problem. But boy, I would look stupid being on this commission, and 5 years from now, some 18-year-old runs who's completely incompetent. Nobody runs against him. And the people look back at us. Why didn't you do something about that? So I'm in favor of going to 21.
All right. Thank you, David. Sharon, you've been very patient. Thank you.
You could tell us bursting at the seams. David, I love you, David. Okay, if we're going by summer not too bright, there's no age limit on that. I just want to say I'm have the honor of working with the United Student Leaders Group on Whidbey Island. These students are in 9th, 10th, 11th grade, and they are leaders, and they are so professional. And I would love to have any one of them as a county councilor. They're not even 18 yet. But I know that's not everybody, but you're looking at who might want to run.
Yeah.
And we don't get to keep young people in the county that much. So maybe it would actually encourage some young people to stay in the county. They can go to college, within the county, or they can postpone college if they want to for a while and get some life experience. I don't know. Okay, I'm done.
Tom?
Well, I just have a question of Jane. Jane, do you think that raising it to 21 would be discriminatory in some way?
I think it has the potential to be, maybe, not necessarily. I think we're going to get asked why. What difference does 18 or 21 mean to the commission, really? Yeah, so it kind of opens you up in a way to being queried on that point, and I would say there's enough savvy San Juan County young people that they might claim it, and it could backfire on us. Not necessarily. I mean, like David said, you kind of have to wonder what eventualities there might be in taking a decision of this nature. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to open us up to something like that. It's something perhaps we want to take to the bigger group of us, to trial it with the bigger group and see what the bigger group thinks. For my money, I would say leave it as it is. And if we feel like going to the larger group, I would be prepared to, if the whole commission says, let's raise it to 21, I wouldn't, maybe I'd vote against. I'd probably be in a minority, but, and we could just see what the voters decide ultimately, right? So I don't feel that I don't feel that strongly about it, but yeah, that's my 2 cents, Tom.
All right, thank you. Very good discussion. Thank you so much. My feeling is that if there is not a problem, what are we fixing? And since the initial conversation was about 18 years old, it looks like it is in the language in a way, kind of understood in the language, because you have to be an registered
Registered
voter.
voter.
So I just think the populace the electorate is very smart in the county. We know we have 91% turnout. So I really doubt that a young person is going to be stepping forward to becoming have to put out $4,000 or $5,000 in expenses just to get going, and then have to run for election. So my feeling is that if we just leave it the way it is and call it good, when we report to the larger group and they want to engage that conversation, we'll give them what we've talked about as input, and I'm sure they'll discuss it further. So my feeling is that we should just leave it the way it is, if that's okay with you all. But
Do we need a motion?
I think in this particular instance, we can say we make a motion that we'll leave it the way it is.
Yeah,
Just leave 520 the way
Well-
it is, because 520 was the one that was actually referenced in Paul's initial conversation, right, Paul?
Yes, but I'd be happy to withdraw that. And if you want to say anything in our discussion, you might want to refer to the fact that we did discuss possibly 21, but it's only discussion and no vote.
Yeah, that's true. We can say we discussed it and we unanimously, not unanimously, that's not the right term. We consented that we're done with it. Or Paul withdrew his
Yeah.
his initial request,
Sure.
and we consented to it. So that's all I can
Yeah.
suggest.
Okay.
Less paperwork, and we can explain ourselves to the larger group if we need to. All right.
Just, I'm okay with that. Just, I suggest that for consistency purposes, we document this, deal with it, present it in the same way that other subcommittees are doing that, with the same type of discussion on an issue that doesn't go anywhere. Just so, we have all a common approach, a common way of communicating. So you might check with the other, or Kevin or somebody, with how to document. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you. All right. Countywide elections or district elections, that's something that Paul brought forward for other elected officials, not just the county, not just the CRC. So Paul, do you want to start that conversation?
Well, yeah, it's a conversation, all right. There are folks out here that are very confused, especially in this last November when we went to vote our council people, both from Orcas as well as San Juan. And they were wondering, why are we voting for Orcas? Or Orcas people might be saying, why is San Juan voting for our Orcas folks, or what, vice versa. So even though if you take a look at the total votes on November 3rd, Orcas folks for Wolf and Hughes on District 2 had no problem of voting in Wolf over Hughes, just Orcas alone. And San Juan for Minnie and Palmater, District 1, comfortably voted in Minnie versus Palmater. Even though if you take a look at both Orcas and San Juan together, and Lopez, because I didn't leave Lopez out, that the results of the election did not change whether you're voting it by district or voted by entire county. See what I'm saying? So I think that some folks are confused the fact, why do we have to have a whole county voting for somebody from a different district? The district people should be voting for their own candidates, in some of the people thinking. So I bring it up because I think it's worthwhile that it was brought to us in 2012. We've had 10 years to live with it. And I think it's worth discussing. The outcome of, in other words, the outcome of the election didn't change whether if you were voting it by district or by the entire county.
Palmatier wasn't elected in San Juan Island. You referred to Palmatier.
He was not elected.
No,
Christine Minnie-
Christine Minnie was elected.
I'm talking about the
The
votes,
result.
the votes from those particular districts.
Oh, from those districts.
Yeah.
So sorry.
What
I'm not
Paul is
clear.
saying is that Palmatier and Minnie election result in San Juan Island alone was kind of the same result as if it were for the whole county, where Palmatier lost to Minnie as well. So if I'm understanding Paul correctly, same thing on Orcas Island.
Well, let's take a look. I
Be
just,
correct on Orcas Island, but also in the whole county. So
correct. So for instance, for Minnie and Palmatier, if you look at District 2, Orcas, how did they vote for those two San Juan council positions? Minnie got 1,564 and Palmatier got 2,227.
So Palmatier won Orcas Island.
But so for District 1, San Juan voting for Minnie and Palmatier was 3,699 for Minnie and 2,137 for Palmatier. So comfortably, District
And
1.
what about Lopez? What about
And
District 3?
Lopez for Minnie and Palmatier,
Mhm.
826 for Minnie and 1,272 for Palmatier. That was the opposite. Palmatier did win on Lopez.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, yeah, go ahead, David.
I lived in Seattle for a long time in the 80s and 90s, and this was an issue every few years, how to choose the council members of the city of Seattle. And it was usually West Seattle, which it kind of felt like they were being dissed and ignored and everything else, that they argued that they should select their own council member, as opposed to this system, which was like we have today, where it's voting for the entire city voted for the council members. So it's not a controversy. It's a complicated thing, and there's swaying back and forth in emotions depending upon what the issues are and what may have been decided by the prior council that a certain district doesn't like, et cetera, et cetera. I personally like the current system. I think it gives an opportunity for voters. Let's say Lopez, for example. That maybe there's some strong candidate on San Juan Island running for that district, but that person is island centric and really is perceived as not really taking a balanced approach to other islands. And so the people on Lopez might realize that and say, well, wait a minute, that's not a fair person. That person's not going to be sympathetic to us. And so I think it's a complicated thing. I like the way it is. I would ask Tom Starr, who was on the commission 10 years ago. As I understand, we changed from the current system from the proposed system 10 years ago. And maybe Tom could educate us on why the change was made and whether he thinks it's worked out the way it was anticipated when the amendment was changed, or the
there was a strong belief that the legislative districts for commissioners, I'll call them that for the moment, should be more equal in population. And so there was even a map, I think I mentioned it in an earlier meeting, there was even a map drawn that showed the south end of San Juan Island, Cattle Point, and that area being attached to the Lopez district, just to equalize the number of voters in the district, which is, kind of a goal across the nation. And so that argument seemed to prevail that no, we don't want to gerrymander these lines around to attempt to make the populations equal. That's just going to cause a lot of headaches and problems everywhere. So let's do countywide voting. And I think it was just as simple as that. In spite of the fact that there is a court case and a federal case which allows communities of islands under 30,000 to have grossly unequal districts. So we could do it legally if we wanted to and not worry about the equalization of the voters in the districts.
I have to tell you, I think the way it is now probably is equitable. I referee soccer and I referee high school soccer, and I tell you, our kids love each other between the islands, but there's definitely a different culture between the islands. When they meet, when the Lopez kids meet the Orcas kids on the soccer field, or the Orcas and the San Juan kids, they love each other, but it's competition. So one team wants to win the game, and so on, but they love each other. So I think it translates also to our cultures as as a county of islands, where each island has its own thing. If the system is working the way it is, and I haven't really heard other than maybe some confusion, because last November we had CRC elections and people were wondering if we're supposed to vote for the San Juan Island CRC commissioners or the Lopez, and we had to kind of explain, says no, each island votes for their own group.
Yeah. Right.
If for the council,
It's a very different thing.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's
It's very
the
different.
only thing that I can suggest from Paul's numbers earlier, if you pick the Palmatier mini election, it looks like Palmatier won Orcas and Lopez,
Lopez.
but because of the size of San Juan,
Yeah.
Mini made up that number. And where she is known and he is known, but not well known on Orcas and not well known on Lopez, probably. I'm just guessing. I don't know.
Right.
So you have that kind of a situation. Yes, Jane.
Yeah, I just I think for the people that I talked to about the elections back in November, in our district, or even just on Lopez Island, we shared a strong interest in who was going to be replacing those two council positions, often because I was talking to people who will go to council meetings and, and advocate for things. And so they're familiar with how the council works and who the reps are, and the fact that a rep is a council person is stepping down. And so they have an vested interest in being familiar with who the candidates are who are running. And so they do research, they do their homework, they talk to people on the other islands to get a sense of who these people are and what kinds of things they support. I mean, those of us who are interested in local politics do that kind of thing. And I too understand from what Tom's experience was in the last commission, that the strong feeling was that it should be countywide. Now, because everybody has a stake in the game that way, kind of thing, now, if Paul's suggesting that it doesn't matter, it doesn't sway the vote either way, I would suggest that if we want to continue looking into that, there needs to be some analysis of the election of every single councillor in the last 10 to 12 years to see how the results have landed. I would suggest there needs to be an evidentiary basis, an analytical basis on which to be making a case that this is how it's played out in the last 10 years with countywide voting. And we do some analytical work around that. Perhaps with the help of the elections people and at the county government. Anyway, my view would be to keep it the way it is. I will say that the reason I thought it might, the reason I supported the idea of countywide for voting for commissioners was because it's consistent with how it's done for councillors, which, as we just discovered, was confusing for the electorate last election, right? So to me, I thought, yeah, well, maybe we just countywide vote for commissioners as well, and keep some consistency in that. For whatever reason, maybe Tom knows, that wasn't the decision that was made in the last review, such that you've got this, you've got these two different things happening, which every 10 years could confuse the electorate. But so anyway, that's my another 2 cents.
Yeah, let me just add just a slightly different issue, that the CRC commissioners are one person per 1,000 inhabitants. The council members are there are 3 people for 17,000 inhabitants. So it's, when we had them at 6, it was equal number of because Orcas had 2, I think, San Juan had 3, and Lopez had 1 when we were 6. And that equated to about 2,000 per member of the council, or whatever it was called at the time. So go ahead, Tom. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to kind of say, did you have your hand up, Tom, or was it Paul?
No.
It was me.
Well,
Paul.
Jane asked me to comment. I was just going to say that nobody was perhaps bright enough to present the statistics that Paul just presented to us 8 years ago, or we might have thought differently, but they're mostly hung up on the idea of equalizing the populations in the districts. And since that couldn't be done, therefore we need countywide voting. It was pretty much as simple as that.
Right. Paul?
Well, one other statistic, I guess you could call it. I forwarded all of the registered voters in San Juan County from the elections department. I sent one to Tom, and I think I sent one to Jane. And the total registered voters in our county as of the last election was 14,549. That is the total registered voters. And if you take a look how that breaks down by district, San Juan District 1, their registered voters is 7,060, which amounts to 48.5% of the entire county. Orcas is 4,861 registered voters. That amounts to 33.4%. And Lopez is 2,628 registered voters, which amounts to 18.1%. Now, if you take a look at what Lopez is going to be coming up next for the council position, and when the candidates come out of Lopez and ready for the entire county to vote, that registers 82% of the entire registered voters from Orcas and San Juan, and 18% from Lopez. That's like the Jolly Green Giant stepping in your way. They're not, it's almost overbearing when you think about it.
Yeah. David?
Yeah, but Paul, they get to choose the candidates. We don't get to choose the candidate. The 82% on Orcas and San Juan Island, we don't choose the candidates. If we chose the candidates, that would be different. But it's going to be somebody that their community has vetted. I like the idea of county council members running to represent everybody, 14,500 people, rather than running to represent just their island. And so they have to, if they want to get reelected, if they don't want to get torn apart in the social media, they have to be even-handed in how they deal with the issues island by island and not just be island centric. So I think we need it. We have the problem of trying to coordinate various islands together as we're all separated by water. And I think by separating and out the election by district or by island, exacerbate whatever the word is that. I think we need to have everybody on the same boat. So thank you.
Thank you. Tom, last word.
Well, yeah, I was just going to add that when I was campaigning for commissioner 27 years ago, I campaigned on all the islands. So it was countywide voting in those days. And somewhere along the line it changed, and I don't know when, but it could have been the first CRC state. What do they call them? Stakeholders? No.
Stakeholders, right? In 04.
Yeah. So in the old days, it was obviously countywide because we commissioners went everywhere in the county in people's living rooms to campaign.
Mhm.
All right. So I want to honor your time. We are at time, and I think I get the feeling that we are thinking that we're keeping this the way it is. Is that what I've heard so far? There hasn't been a compelling reason to change the county council for it to be district-wide vote as opposed to county-wide vote. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think so.
Okay. So is it okay then, Paul, that we can say that we chatted about it and we decided that the way it is now is okay? And we,
when I bring these up, I think it's just a matter to stir the pot a little bit to see what comes out of it, because if you don't say anything at all, you haven't really discussed it. And I think that's about as good as even taking a vote in one way or the other.
Right.
So I'm just glad to have the discussion.
Thank you for bringing that out. We're going to go a couple minutes longer than I anticipated, so just bear with me for a second. There's another item that the elections office actually did not know about this, because they were going to put our names in the primary. I called Richard Freilich, who was a former commissioner, and I said the charter says that there should not be a primary for the charter commission. Then of course, then everybody at the elections office had to retool and change things. So do we want to have a primary for the charter commissioners? Or you think how it worked last November was fine? This is a new subject. We don't have to discuss it any further than a few words here and there. But David, go ahead.
I think it's a worthy subject for discussion, and not now, not necessarily to make a decision now. I remember asking Mylene when I ran why we weren't on the primary ballot, and I got an answer that is a practical answer, but really not the best answer, and that was it's a cost issue.
It's
It's an expense issue, and I feel uncomfortable with that being the determinant of whether or not we have a primary. Why don't we don't have a primary for president to save money?
But that's,
I think that's, I would like to know more about why we don't do it. There may be other reasons, but in principle,
David, not to interrupt you, but I just mentioned the reason. It's in the charter. There's no primary for commissioners of the charter commission.
okay, well, maybe Mylene argued that it shouldn't be put in there so to save money or something. I don't know.
Jane?
My question for when we discuss this perhaps at the next meeting would be what would be the necessity of having a primary? How would it improve the process? And I'm ready to be enlightened by you guys on that. Is it necessary for this type of entity? So yeah, sure. I'm open to discussing it further if we want to talk about it in the next meeting.
I just brought it up just to say that there was a confusion even at the elections office.
Okay. Yeah.
And they would have actually gone with a primary because people were anyway. So let's discuss it later or the next time if we want. My thought for next time is really one item, which is Tom took the effort to write a paragraph about his experience and what he thinks the elections office should do. And I think we talked about that last week, that we'll bring that forward as a recommendation for the rest of the group, not as an action item on our part, that there's actually some, we feel that there's a problem in the elections office. And I said that to you via email. So please take time to look at it. And if we come back next time and we decide that that's something we want to consider chatting about, we could. If not, then we don't have to. And I think, if I'm understanding correctly, Tom, you are just basically wanting us to continue presenting this to the larger group as a recommendation, because this is not really a governance issue. This is more of a procedural issue. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, and it wasn't really my idea to stay on with it. I thought we were told either by you or somebody that it's procedural and beyond the scope of charter type of issues, but we could send a recommendation that they can either do or not do that would have our blessing.
Yeah. So
that's the spirit that I wrote it in.
Perfect. That's actually good information. My fault, my bad. I probably forgot you mentioned that before. So let's just do this. Maybe for this particular item, let's use email and kind of give idea of if you wanted to move forward or not. And then we can either have a meeting to discuss it next time, or just basically have no meeting and we'll be done. David?
But what do we have left as possible agenda items if we have our next meeting? This issue of election observing would possibly be one, and then and this one about the primary for the charter review. Is that on?
I threw that out. It doesn't have to be anything further. I just threw it out because I thought that there was confusion in the elections office, not in the public, in the elections office of the primary or no primary. And I thought that's kind of weird, but
but we need to decide as a group if we are going to go forward with that or not. I know you just threw it out, but do we want to follow up on your comments or not? I'm fine with it the way it is, and I
Okay. Jane,
myself.
thank you. Yeah,
Tony, I just wondered, is it worth looking at other charters of the 6 others in the state to see what they have and whether it's part of their primary? I'm not offering to do that because I unfortunately don't have time, but I don't know. You might be curious just to take a peek at those other charter counties and just see. But
I'll volunteer.
oh, okay.
all right. Let's do that by email, David, please, if you don't mind. So tell us what you found via email, and we have a few days. We can consider that via email. And I'm not attached to any of that. I don't really care either way. I'm just saying that it's an item. Cost could be an issue, but it is in the charter of not having a primary.
Right.
And I don't want, if there's not a problem, we don't need to fix it, no problem. So great, this is good. We're 5-6 minutes over. Thank you for bearing with all of this. And I think we've done a lot of work. So we should be proud to say that we are still the best. Sorry, Jane. We're the better, one of the better committees.
Well, I think so as well, actually, because I'm on it. I'm just kidding.
Great. If there's nothing else, I would entertain us to call it a day. And again, Sharon, thank you so much for hanging in with us for this week. And if all goes well, we might not have another meeting. So, so you don't have to worry about it.
I move we adjourn.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, great. And
All
thank you, Sharon. So next meeting for the commissioners, I will give us a report of what we finished today, and hopefully we'll get busy with the other committees we're on. All right.
We might see what the town halls bring.
Oh, yes, yes.
right.
Yeah.
And thank you, by the way, for your stuff that you're doing, Jane, about your Facebook and putting it, and that's great.
Sure, no problem. Yeah. Feel free to use it. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Tony, for chairing us so effectively.
Great. Thank you so much for all
Thank
you.
you.
Great group.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.